The following is a DW Ancient Egypt production. The mastabas of officials from the previous dynasties had lined the edge of the plateau at Saqqara, overlooking Memphis from the west. Djoser decided to move his monument back from the plateau's edge by about a mile before building his mastaba. Originally, this project was a normal mastaba. However, his architect and vizier, Imhotep, enlarged the mastaba several times while stacking mastaba on top of mastaba. What he created was the first stone building in history, which consisted of 6 unequal steps rising to 204 feet. Known as the Step Pyramid, this temple complex also had a substructure of honeycomb shafts and tunnels. This construction was probably 3 or 4 times larger than any other building on the planet at the time. Here, Djoser built chapels and planned a complex intended for use as a courtyard for the Hebsed and other rituals. The Hebsed festival celebrated the rejuvenation of the aging pharaoh every 30 years. When observing the decoration details for this temple complex, one can see that the stone imitates the reed construction techniques from previous temples in the past. The fine fluting on the columns immediately called to mind the Greek Doric column, but this comes an amazing 2,000 years later. The complex covers 37 acres and is about 2.5 times as large as the Old Kingdom town of Hierakonpolis. Several features of the complex differ from those of later Old Kingdom pyramids. The mortuary temple is situated at the north side of the pyramid, whereas in later pyramids, it is on the east side. Also, Djoser's complex is built on a north-south axis, whereas later complexes utilize an east-west axis. Furthermore, the Djoser complex has one niched enclosure wall, whereas later pyramids have 2 enclosure walls, with the outside one being smooth and the inside one being sometimes niched. The enclosure wall was built of light Tura limestone 34 feet high. The wall is interrupted by 14 doors, 13 of which were fake or false doors. They were meant only for the king's use in the afterlife. They functioned as portals through which the king's ka, or soul, could pass between life and the afterlife. The functional door at the southeast end of the complex led to a narrow passageway that connects to a roofed colonnade. The roofed colonnade led from the enclosure wall to the south of the complex. A passageway with a limestone ceiling, constructed to look as though it was made from whole tree trunks, led to a massive stone imitation of 2 open doors. Beyond this portal was a hall with 20 pairs of limestone columns composed of drum-shaped segments built to look like bundles of plant stems and reaching a height of 22 feet. The columns were not freestanding, but were attached to the wall by masonry projections. Between the columns on both sides of the hall were small chambers, which some Egyptologists propose may have been for each of the provinces of Upper and Lower Egypt. At the end of the colonnade was the transverse hypostyle room, with 8 columns connected in pairs by blocks of limestone. This led to the south court. The south court was the large court between the south tomb and the pyramid. At the southern end of the court was a platform approached by steps. It has been suggested that this was a platform for the double throne. This fits into the theory proposed by Barry Kemp, and generally accepted by many, that suggests the whole Step Pyramid complex symbolized the royal palace enclosure and allowed the king to eternally perform the rituals associated with kingship. At the very south of the south court lay the south tomb. The south tomb is comparable to the satellite pyramids of later dynasties and is considered the home of the ka in the afterlife. This was Djoser's southern burial, just a couple of 100 yards from the Step Pyramid. This construction was a mastaba, not a pyramid. The substructure of the south tomb was entered through a tunnel-like corridor with a staircase that descended about 100 feet before opening up into the pink granite burial chamber. The staircase then continued west and led to a gallery that imitated the blue chambers below the Step Pyramid. Blue tiles on the inside, made of ceramic called faience, featured the king running a Hebsed festival. The symbolic king's inner palace is much more complete than that of the pyramid. The pyramid was not simply a grave in ancient Egypt. Its purpose was to facilitate a successful afterlife for the king so that he could be eternally reborn. It also facilitated the king's ascension to join the eternal North Star. Under the step pyramid is a labyrinth of tunneled chambers and galleries that total nearly 4 miles in length and connect to a central shaft 23 feet wide and 92 feet deep. These spaces provided room for the king's burial, the burial of family members, and the storage of goods and offerings. The entrance to the shaft was built on the north side of the pyramid, a trend that would remain throughout the Old Kingdom. The sides of the underground passages were limestone, inlaid with blue faience tile, just like the South Tomb's substructure. These walls also revealed the king participating in the Hebsed festival. These chambers resembled the palace and would serve as the new palace of the royal Ka. In the storerooms, over 40,000 stone vessels were discovered, many of which predated Djoser. These would have served Djoser's visceral needs in the afterlife. An extensive network of underground galleries were located to the north, west, and south of the central burial chamber, and crude horizontal magazines were carved into these. The burial chamber was a vault constructed of 4 courses of well-dressed granite. It had one opening, which was sealed with a 3.5-ton block after the burial. No mummy was recovered, as the tomb had been extensively robbed during antiquity. Archaeologists found evidence of limestone blocks with 5-pointed stars in low relief that were likely on the ceiling, indicating the first occurrence of what would become a tradition. Unfortunately, all of the precautions and intricate design of the underground complex did not prevent ancient robbers from finding a way in. Djoser's grave goods, and even his mummy, were stolen at some point in the past, and all the archaeologists found of the king was parts of his mummified foot, and a few valuables overlooked by the thieves. The northern funerary mortuary temple was on the north side of the pyramid. This structure was the cult center for the king. To the east of the temple was the serdab, which was a small enclosed structure that housed the Ka statue. This small statue of the pharaoh was where his soul could live if his body was destroyed, or until he was resurrected. This temple appeared on the north side of the pyramid throughout the 3rd dynasty, as the king wished to go north to become one of the eternal stars in the north sky that never set. In the 4th dynasty, when there was a religious shift to an emphasis on rebirth and eternity achieved through the sun, the mortuary temple was moved to the east side of the pyramid, where the sun rises, so that through association with the sun, the king could be reborn every day. The Hebsed court was parallel to the south courtyard. It was meant to provide a space in which the king could perform the Hebsed ritual. Flanking the east and west sides of the court were the remains of 2 groups of chapels, many of which were dummy buildings of 3 different architectural styles. Imhotep is one of the few Egyptian architects to be known to us by name. Revered as a scribe, counselor, doctor, priest, and astronomer, he was later deified and worshipped as a god of architecture and medicine. Devotees made pilgrimages to Saqqara, where he is most likely buried. He was one of the only 2 commoners ever to be deified after death, the other being Amenhotep, son of Hapu.